This is a fight I always wanted to see, but it never happened. I wrote the story start to finish with 2 alternate endings because honestly this fight could go either way. So if you're not a fan of Dragon Ball Z or really know the characters, you should probably keep scrolling. It was a quiet day at the tournament ring Perfect Cell had constructed. The artificial life form stood in the center of his arena, arms crossed, a smirk plastered on his face. He had proclaimed his tournament to the universe and eagerly awaited the strongest fighters to challenge him. Yet, today there was an unusual disturbance. A crackling electric hum reverberated through the air. The sky above the arena split open, swirling with green and gold energy. A single figure descended from the heavens, surrounded by an aura of unrelenting power. It was Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan. Cell's smirk widened as he observed the intruder. The sheer force of Broly's presence made the earth beneath the arena tremble. The Saiyan's towering frame glowed with pulsating energy, his green hair radiating like an inferno. Broly's eyes glowed with fury, his expression twisted with a mixture of madness and battle-hardened focus. "And who might you be?" Cell asked, his tone dripping with arrogance. "Another lamb to the slaughter?" Broly landed with a deafening crash, shattering the ground beneath him. He looked up, his voice low, menacing growl. You're strong, but strength won't be enough to save you." Cell chuckled. "Interesting. You seem confident. Let me see if you can back it up." Without warning, Broly lunged forward, his speed a blur despite his massive size. Cell barely had time to react as the Saiyan's fist crashed into him, sending the bio-android flying through several stone pillars. The arena shook as Cell skidded to a halt, his grin replaced with a glimmer of frustration. "Impressive," Cell admitted, wiping a smear of blood from his lip. "But you'll have to do better than that." The fight escalated with ferocity. Broly's raw power was a whirlwind of destruction, his energy blasts leaving craters in their wake. Cell countered with precision and cunning, his perfect body absorbing and deflecting the attacks with skill. Their blows echoed like thunder, shockwaves rippling out for miles. Broly's energy began to spike uncontrollably, his rage amplifying his strength. Green orbs of destruction rained down upon Cell, who dodged and retaliated with his own devastating Kamehameha. The clash of their attacks created a brilliant explosion, obliterating what remained of the ring. "I see now," Cell mused, standing amid the chaos. "You're a monster, a force of nature, but you're not perfect." Broly snarled, his aura flaring brighter. He charged again, but Cell had anticipated his movement. With a flash of speed, Cell maneuvered behind Broly and drove a devastating energy beam through his chest. Broly stumbled but roared in defiance. His body seemed to defy logic, regenerating through sheer willpower. His power surged again, greater than before, and he unleashed a devastating attack. A swirling sphere of green energy engulfed the battlefield, forcing Cell to expand all his power to shield himself. As the dust settled, both warriors stood battered but unyielding. Cell's grin returned. "You are entertaining. I'll give you that. But even you must have a limit." Broly growled, his breath heavy, yet his eyes burned with determination. "I don't stop. I destroy." The battle raged on, a titanic clash of brute strength against calculated perfection. Neither combatant yielded, each testing the very limits of their power. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath, watching as these two forces of nature fought to the death. The outcome uncertain, the devastation absolute. The battlefield had become an apocalyptic wasteland. The once pristine tournament ring was nothing but rubble, scorched and twisted by the relentless fury of Broly and Perfect Cell's clash. Each blow they exchanged sent shockwaves across the landscape, tearing apart mountains and reshaping the terrain itself. Cell, though visibly worn, was still composed. His smirk persisted, though a flicker of unease crept into his expression. Broly, on the other hand, seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. The legendary Super Saiyan's fury had reached a fever pitch, his muscles bulging, his green aura blazing brighter than ever. "You're starting to bore me," Cell taunted, though his voice carried a trace of forced confidence. "All that raw power and yet no finesse, no strategy." Broly responded with a guttural roar, his voice shaking the heavens. He launched himself at Cell with speed and power that defied his massive frame. This time, his attacks were relentless, unyielding, and precise in their destruction. Each punch and kick carried enough force to shatter mountains, and Cell found himself struggling to maintain his composure. I'll admit it, Cell said, dodging a massive green energy blast that carved a canyon into the earth. You're stronger than I expected, but you lack control, and that's why you'll lose. Cell vanished in a blur, appearing behind Broly and striking with a precise blow to the back of his neck. The Saiyan stumbled but quickly turned, swinging with a wild punch that Cell barely avoided. Broly's power was overwhelming, but his fury left openings that Cell exploited with cold calculation. You talk too much, Broly growled, his voice a rumble of thunder. Cell smirked. And you think too little. The bioandroid fired a death beam directly at Broly's chest, the attack hitting its mark. For a moment, Cell allowed himself a brief moment of triumph. But then, to his shock, Broly stood unfazed, the wound closing almost instantly. Broly's laughter was deep and guttural, filled with terrifying joy. Your tricks won't save you. Nothing will. The ground beneath Cell's feet cracked as Broly powered up further. His aura surged, erupting in a cataclysmic wave that sent debris flying in every direction. The sheer force of his energy caused the sky to darken, thunder roaring as the atmosphere struggled to contain his power. Cell scowled, realizing the severity of the situation. I see now, he muttered. You're a mindless beast, but one that keeps getting stronger. If I don't end this now. Cell raised his hands, gathering energy into a massive golden sphere above his head. I suppose I'll have to vaporize you completely, he declared, his voice rising with a mixture of determination and desperation. Broly merely grinned, his eyes glowing with an unholy light. He began charging his own attack, a swirling mass of green and black energy crackling between his hands. The two titanic warriors launched their attacks simultaneously. The beams collided in the center of the battlefield, creating a vortex of energy that threatened to tear reality apart. The ground split open, magma spewing forth as the sheer intensity of their clash destabilized the planet itself. For a moment, the outcome was uncertain. The two warriors pushed with everything they had, their attacks locked in a stalemate. But then, Broly roared, his power spiking to an unimaginable level. His energy overwhelmed Cell's attack, consuming the bioandroid in a blinding explosion of green light. When the dust finally settled, the battlefield was silent. Broly stood in the center of the destruction, his chest heaving, his body battered but victorious. Cell's remains were nowhere to be seen, his perfect form obliterated by the sheer force of Broly's power. Broly looked to the sky, his rage slowly subsiding. He let out one final roar, a declaration of his supremacy, before his aura flickered and dimmed. For now, the legendary Super Saiyan stood alone, the strongest in the universe. But even as he turned to leave, the faint sound of laughter echoed through the air. You think it's over? Cell's voice called out, sinister and mocking. Broly froze, his eyes narrowing from the shadows of the ruined battlefield. Cell began to reform, his body regenerating piece by piece. You may have destroyed me once, Cell said, his smirk returning as his body fully reassembled. But perfection cannot be defeated so easily. The battlefield trembled as Cell fully regenerated, his laughter echoing across the desolation. Broly, his breath heavy and his body glowing faintly, turned toward his foe. Despite the damage he had dealt, the legendary Super Saiyan felt a flicker of frustration. Cell's ability to reform was unlike anything he had encountered before. Is this the best you can do? Cell taunted, his grin widening. You might have strength, but you lack the ability to finish the job. I will always return, stronger and better than before. Broly's lips curled into a snarl. Then I'll erase you until there's nothing left. Cell prepared to counter, but in that moment, the Saiyan's energy began to spike once more. Broly's aura flared violently, golden green light engulfing him in a swirling storm of raw power. This time, the energy was unstable, chaotic, and growing beyond his control. You're going to destroy us both! Cell shouted, a rare note of fear creeping into his voice. Broly didn't respond. He rose into the air, his power surging to critical levels. The planet itself began to crack apart, massive fissures opening as Broly prepared his final attack. His roar echoed like a primal force of nature shaking the heavens. Take this! Broly bellowed, hurling an enormous sphere of energy directly at Cell. The attack was unstoppable, a culmination of Broly's rage and power. Cell's expression shifted to desperation. He braced himself, but even in his perfect form was no match for the sheer magnitude of the attack. The energy consumed him, obliterating his body completely. This time there was no regeneration, no laughter, only silence as Cell was wiped from existence. The energy continued to grow, its sheer force threatening to annihilate the planet. Broly hovered for a moment, his rage finally spent, but as his power waned, his body gave out and he plummeted to the ground, unconscious. Far above the battlefield, a small figure watched from the clouds. It was Goku, who had arrived just in time to witness the final moments of the clash. So that's Broly, Goku murmured, his expression a mix of awe and concern. Looks like even Cell wasn't enough to stop him. The Saiyan warrior teleported to Broly's side, placing a hand on his shoulder. You've done enough, big guy. Let's get you somewhere safe. With that, Goku used instant transmission to transport Broly off the crumbling planet just as it began to collapse. The battlefield, once a stage for two of the universe's most powerful warriors, was reduced to cosmic rubble. Broly stirred slightly as they reappeared on a distant, peaceful world. Goku looked down at him with a grin. You're strong, Goku said. But there's always somebody stronger. Maybe someday we'll fight too. Broly's eyes opened briefly, and for the first time, there was no rage in them, only exhaustion. He closed them again, slipping into a deep, dreamless sleep. The battle between Broly and Cell was over, leaving behind a legacy of destruction and power that would be remembered for ages. Both warriors had pushed their limits, but in the end, only one had survived. And as the universe moved on, it remained a testament to the chaos unleashed when titans clash.